Hello, um, my name is Jonathan, and I am, really, I feel so excited, when I see that, the principles of democracy, are really, at work. They're like, fighting to make itself relevant in our world today. Democracy is a force. It's some kind of energy that it creates some kind of excitement, and it energizes and propel people into action. They become so proactive, so passionate, and you can see that excitement, and hopefully that kind of energy can translate into us building much more meaningful and beloved society. You see, the point is that so many people are like really scratching their head and wondering, and there are a lot of notions and concepts that are espoused out there, and I think they can be very confusing. But I think it's important to frame the debate, from a certain angle, in order to really bring some clarity to things that people are not even certain about it. Because if you don't understand the history of the United States and how this nation was founded, the fact here is that you're going to just be speaking like someone who, perhaps, were treating the 13 colonies like the King of England and the British Empire and the folks at the time. Because, you can't say that, Donald Trump is banned in the UK, so for that reason he's not eligible to run for president. But first of all, you have to understand the history of the United States and Great Britain, that the Declaration of Independence came as a result of the attitude of the British King and the British people and the people in England. So who really cares if the British people ban Donald Trump? Donald Trump, Donald Trump has a right to run for president. So too are the Clintons. And I believe any other person that you are born and that you are eligible under the terms of the Constitution, you can run for president. But to say that he's crazy or that he's a racist, I don't think so. I just think that is just some excuses that people are given to demonize people. The Constitution of the United States of America, per the First Amendment, gives the right for people to assemble freely. It also guarantees religious liberty, which is something that we know that is hardly encouraged in other societies. If you think about religious violence in the Middle East and how Christians are being persecuted and killed, you think about religious violence in Nigeria. There's always a conflict between Muslims and Christians. At least I think that you appreciate what I'm talking about. So that's where I'm coming from. So the First Amendment does not only allow people to assemble freely and worship and to believe in whatever God they want to believe, or to pursue whatever religions they have, which is the whole idea about religious liberty, which means that your sense of liberty or your sense of the divine is upon you. You're the one that you have to to cultivate that. And if you find a connection in the real world, then that's where I think that you start to think about creating your own meaning and establish your identity. So you have Christians on one hand, and so my worldview is a Christian worldview. I look at the world through Christianity and not through Islam, but that doesn't mean that I have a problem with Islam. And so it's important for us to look at these things. And then another thing that the Constitution too talks about is free speech. First Amendment right, the right for you to freely express yourself. Is freely express yourself, which means that you're not only expressing that sense of the divine, you're expressing whatever sentiments you have, whatever beliefs you hold, whatever in your thoughts, which is better. It's better than to bundle these things and just be silent about it, and nobody knows what are your thoughts or what is in your psyche or your imagination. And because of that First Amendment right, I think that is exactly what has happened. When Donald Trump declared his candidacy to run for president, he was not acting unconstitutionally or outside the construction of the Constitution, which, tells me that he has done things, appropriately. He's been a very successful businessman, a successful father. As a true patriot. Donald Trump speaks like a patriot. To me, I think that he's a reincarnation, of the founding fathers. People love their nation. I mean, I love my country, Cameroon. People ask me, why haven't you become an American citizen? I said, the American government has been so kind to me that they gave me indefinite asylum. I said, look, which of course translating to me becoming a citizen. I don't feel like becoming an American citizen because like I'm running away from my country, and I don't want to feel like I'm abandoning my country. So I'm glad to be here. So the way he speaks, I think sometimes people misconstrue Donald Trump. They think that he's a racist, he's a bigot, he doesn't like people. No, he does like people. I really believe that he really loves people, he likes people. What he's challenging us, especially us African people who come from corrupt societies that, are under, tyrannical regime, totalitarianism, folks who, they don't care about us. Socrates had a conversation, a discussion about 5 kinds of regime, and he talked about, tyranny as one of the worst kinds of regime you can ever think of. You don't expect women's rights in a tyrannical regime or democracy or some kind of, to be interested in the principle of transparency and accountability, not to even talk about good governance and the rule of law, because in order for good governance and rule of law to really prevail in a society, that society has to be free and democratic. And there's so many countries in Africa that are not free and democratic, and yet the United States has been in a relationship with this country for a very long time, and this diplomatic relationship are for what? If they don't translate into transforming those societies so that they can become free and democratic as the United States of America. Liberal democracy was not something that was only invented, for people in the United States of America. You have to go back and to look at what was really the modus operandi of the founding fathers. What were they thinking about? They had a very great, vision, and they were looking at the big picture. They really wanted human beings to be free, people to be free. They think that human beings born into this world, regardless of society and regardless of cultural color, that they have a right to be free. They have a right to natural rights, and that natural rights come from God. Natural rights is not something that your mother and father have to have a decision and to make a decision and say, well, now we're going to confer on you natural rights. No, this is not. It's not a title. It's something that you have it as a result of the fact that you are born into this world. In a world where you are under God's sovereignty, and that God has established covenant principles that are binding upon us, and that these covenant principles, they are for our own good. That principles of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, principles of human dignity, principles that will inspire us and lay the foundation upon which we can prosper. And so if there's lack of prosperity, if we're not able to create wealth, if we're not happy, if we're not living in peace, if we're not united, because those are the things that God is interested in, then something is wrong. Those are the things we ought to be looking into, and not looking at what Donald Trump is saying. If you don't love your country, obviously, you don't care about it. You plunder the country, you don't care about posterity, you don't even care about what kind of government, should be in that country or the political system. So I think it's important to look at these things from this perspective, because I think it will help us to understand what are the motivations of individuals who are running for public office. I just want to say that I have absolute respect and admiration for all the candidates that run for president, for their courage, for their passion, for the love of their country. And this has been made possible by the Constitution and by the kind of political regime that has been, approved for this country, since 1776. It's always been a conversation. It's been something that people are always exploring. And so you see people are questioning whether the American two-party system is good enough for this society. They think that for a population of about 3 million people that we ought to have more than one party system. It's true. maybe that will happen. Maybe when there's great need, we have to start thinking about the possibility of introducing a third party system, or at least lifting up the third party that I know that is existing, but there are certain conditions that they need to fulfill, certain eligibility requirements that they haven't met with. But as a matter of fact, for now, a lot of people really have to be careful, when they go out there to vote or when they're not voting. Because when you don't vote, that is really, unfortunate, because that might really be disservice, to humanity. I mean, hey, I know that you have the freedom not to vote, just as you have the freedom to vote. But what I'm saying is that I'm encouraging people to go out and vote. Americans should go out and vote, because we come from societies where we've never voted, where voting is even useless, because you have a dictator like Dictator Paul Biya of Cameroon, who has been in power since 1982, changing the constitution whenever he thinks fit. And then he would go around there and corrupt people, and then they would generate what is called emotional support. No, you don't do that. You don't go around and corrupt people to say that you're the only person that competent that can run for president. The Constitution says that it's a two-term. It means that it doesn't matter how competent you are. And I know the Democratic Party always claim that they can run for president up to 3 or 4 times, because they create this